Hello and welcome to Juliet and Lucy's Quiet Leadership Revolution, the podcast for senior and aspiring leaders who want to make their voice heard, their impact felt through thoughtful, reflective and confident leadership. I'm Juliet Corbett, an executive coach and strategist, and I work one-to-one with senior leaders, guiding them to find their strategic focus, empower their teams and regain control over their time.
And I'm Lucy Gower. I'm a facilitator, trainer and coach, and I empower leaders to build their happy, confident and high-performing teams. Today we're talking about whether a good leader needs to be 100% immersed in work. And as we were coming up with this topic, Juliet and I had difference of opinion on what even we were talking about. So for me, immersion, 100% immersion doesn't need to be about being in work or showing up all the time. You can be 100% immersed, even if you are not there doing something else. But I think, Juliet, you had a slightly different take.
I did. So I automatically, so context, we set this title as a good title we wanted to speak about a good month ago. I came back to it in preparation for this recording and I interpreted it as 100% immersed, meaning you're working really, really long hours and really putting in an enormous amount of effort into the leadership role that you have. And so I came up with a completely different answer to the one that you did. And I am intrigued, and we didn't change the title because I'm intrigued to know your perspective and to explore what that means to be 100% immersed without working really long hours. And that's a really interesting thing to be exploring. So tell me a bit more about what your thoughts were around this. How could we be as leaders 100% immersed and working a suitable number of work hours? Obviously different people would define that in a different way.
So for me, when I first read that title, I was thinking a bit more about, is immersion and commitment the same thing or not? So, there's a lot of leaders that I work with. Yes, we work hard, but being online and available 24/7 isn't the best for being the best at your job, your role. And so you can still, my belief is you can still be 100% committed and immersed in the work that you are doing. And your subconscious, when you are out walking the dog with friends, doing all the things that you need to kind of replenish your energy and to bring different thoughts and perspectives into what you're doing, your subconscious is still working away in the background, solving some of those problems that you have in your day job. So for me, there's a definition between being 100% immersed doesn't mean that you have to be on all the time, and being 100% committed means that when something happens in your family and you're like, hang on a minute, that sparked the idea for something else that I'm working on at work, even though it's a Sunday afternoon and work isn't on your radar at all, it is in your subconscious.
So I think we ended up with the same end point, but getting there in a different way, which is really interesting. So my automatic answer to this was no, a good leader does not need to be 100% immersed if we're defining 100% immersed as being working an excessively long number of hours each week. And the reason is because your subconscious will still be working on things outside of your working hours. You see things more clearly as a result of being properly rested and having done some of those restorative activities, which doesn't just mean putting your feet up in front of Netflix, although let's be honest, sometimes it means exactly that. But it means that restorative process of doing things and being with people that fill your bucket back up, that give you energy, and that through that way of kind of managing your week or your month so that you've got a balance of different things in there that are restoring you and enabling you to bring in that cognitive diversity and ideas back into the workplace. That's what enables you to be a really great leader. So I think we got to the same answer. It's just that I, interestingly, and it is a good self-reflection for me, what made me assume that we were talking about reducing working out, not necessarily reducing, but containing to a reasonable number of working hours.
Yeah.
And I think for me, maybe the short answer is because a lot of people I work with, that is the middle stepping stone in this process, because a lot of people I work with are working longer hours than they want to, longer hours than are actually necessary to do their leadership role.
Yeah. And I think there's a bit of a leftover from perhaps a few years ago with this thought of in order to be doing your best work, you need to be at your desk. So I remember, at the beginning of COVID when we were starting to work much more flexibly and from home, some of the clients I was talking to were saying, but, what if our people can't do all the work from home? What if they are just sort of swanning about and not showing up? And I was like, well, I think that's probably the least of your problems. If you don't trust your people to be doing the work, that's a bigger problem for you than anything else right now. And what we've learned is that flexibility is a good thing. So I remember when I was first working within innovation and this piece that you talk about in terms of cognitive diversity. So, the broader your breadth of skills and experience that you can bring back to your problem solving, the better. So I would encourage people that I was working with to go out and learn something new, to not be at your desk in order to do your best thinking, to go for a walk, go and relax, go and talk to customers, go and talk to competitors, do anything to try and get different perspectives. But we still, if we have a very high values base of if I work hard, I get good results, can still mean I've got to be kind of present at my desk in order to be able to do that. That's Gary in the background. He has got a lot to say about this as well.
Excellent. Okay, there we go. So Gary the dog, by the way, context for those of you who are listening who haven't met Gary yet. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So there's something in here around the presenteeism that has been historical that we have slightly dropped, but there's something maybe in mindsets of I need to be sitting at my desk to be working, which just is not true. Is not true. You might be consciously working cognitively on something away from your desk. Meeting with customers, getting out there, talking to more people is always a good idea in almost any leadership role. And you will also be working on challenges and getting ideas for different ways of approaching those challenges when you're not consciously thinking about work, even when you're doing something completely unrelated. And that experience that we've all had of doing the washing up or walking the dog or playing Lego with the kids and suddenly realizing, oh, yeah, that would be a better way of doing that. Right. And I think there's a little bit about boundaries of not then just getting up and going to do that thing, but writing it on a post-it, writing it in a phone note, emailing it to yourself, whatever, what you need to do to get it out of your head so that you can then be present in the activity again that you were doing. But that function of the brain keeping working, this isn't just chance and it isn't just occasional, it is consistent human experience.
Yeah.
And so we can trust it.
Yeah.
And we can harness it.
Exactly. And I think as you're talking, the other thing that springs to mind there is as a leader, you're role modeling culture and behavior within your team and organization. And if you're the person that is always at their desk, always being busy, I have a real thing about this badge of busy. How are you? Oh, I'm really busy. An episode that we did recently about slowing down to be more effective, it is fundamentally about that. But if you're role modeling behaviors and a culture that you want to see in others, then your ability to switch off, step away from your desk and role model that is really important. Doesn't mean to say you're not 100% committed or you're not 100% immersed. Like you say, when you're doing Lego on a Sunday afternoon, some of those breakthrough moments might come to you. But if you didn't give your brain the let up and the relaxation time to be doing the Lego, if you find Lego relaxing, some people don't, I'm going to acknowledge that, then you're not giving yourself the opportunity to do your best thinking.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is one of those areas where, and I'm kind of taking the definition of immersed as being working excessively long hours for a few seconds here, but we sometimes get caught up into this trap of I need to be present, I need to be demonstrating that I'm doing stuff, and therefore I can't be criticized because I'm doing stuff for long hours of the week. In reality, of course, when we should be and often are being assessed by the impact that we have. And as leaders, that's the impact of what we affect to happen, not just what we do ourselves, it's what we enable to happen through our teams. But there's a feeling sometimes, I think, that even if leaders kind of had that feeling that, yeah, when I'm working long hours, I'm not doing my best work. That there's a lack of a rigor around explaining why that happens. And so I think we've touched on a few of those things, but I think there are three strands that come out for me. One is that slow down to speed up. We talked about it a couple of episodes ago. We'll put the link in the episode notes this time. But that idea that when you do slow down, you see things, you
Yeah.
hear your intuition, you get ideas that are different to the way you've been trying to do it. And by stepping
Yeah.
away, that's when you get the fresh insight occurring to you. So that's one, slow down to speed up. The second one, I think, is that cognitive diversity as a team. If all of the team, including the leader, is doing other things outside of work and then bringing ideas back in to team meetings, obviously in innovation, that's really important. But in any meeting, we're looking to be innovative and looking for new ideas, fresh ways of doing things. It's a constant way of being
Yeah.
in the workplace. So that cognitive diversity partly comes from doing things outside of work and then bringing those ideas back into work. So it sparks new ideas. And then the third area here, there is something um, around rest, which is really critically important. And I know some people don't like the word rest because it seems to be synonymous for some people with laziness. And I have to be honest, that would have been me kind of 8 years ago or something. If you'd said rest to me, my mind would have basically heard lazy. But restorative activities is the way I often phrase it. These are things that you do which restore you, and whatever that element of you is, but it's around kind of energy management, making sure you've got the energy and the kind of input to get back into work and do a really good job. And so I think that we're starting to see enough rationale
Mhm.
behind why this stepping away from work works.
Mm.
And I think so that's some of the answers. I'm sure there are other elements of the puzzle in there as well, the logic in there as well. But it's believing it, isn't it, Lucy, that isn't always easy.
Yes. And it's trusting the process, having a go
Yes.
at stepping away. Like, when I go out to walk Gary the dog, I will often pose myself a question that I've been working on, and I'll go and walk the dog and just let and percolate. And I have to honestly, 9 times out of 10, I come back with something that has moved my thinking forward. I might not have come up with like a eureka moment, but I'll have percolated something that is moving
Yeah.
my thinking forward. There are some organizations, some forward thinking organizations that have a learning and development budget, which is specifically for go out and do some of the things that you're curious about. It doesn't
Mm.
necessarily relate exactly to your role, with the knowledge that helping people to relax, follow their curiosity, do things that they're interested in brings a whole wealth of different thoughts and thinking that
Yeah.
ultimately make a difference to their performance at work and the
Yeah.
organizational success. And I remember having a friend that worked for one of these organizations that learnt to scuba dive as some of that budget helped them
Yeah.
learn to scuba dive. And I'll not
Brilliant.
lie, I was envious of that.
Yeah.
But like, there are examples of where this absolutely works. And if we go back to innovation, there's examples where people were doing something completely unrelated and had breakthrough
Yeah.
moments. And that's
I
how
think
our
a
brain.
lot of that, yeah, it is how our brains work. I think a lot of the lack of belief is maybe because we're going so fast, we don't give ourselves the time to collect our own personal evidence base. So part of it is if you kind of think there's something in it, but you're not sure yet, do whatever you can to start to step away a bit, start to slow down a bit, with the reflective mindset of, oh, let's see what happens. Because then you start to see, and I think that's a great way to start to create your own personal evidence bank as
Yes.
to how it works.
And as a
Um,
leader of a team, encouraging and enabling and leading by example for your team to do some of that. Make sure you, like, even on the very most basic level, make sure you have a lunch break, go for a walk around the block. Let's
yeah,
find out what you're interested in. What learnings can you take from the thing that you're interested in to apply to a problem that you're solving?
yeah,
One of my clients, we used to have a coffee, talk about the thing that we needed to kind of unpick a bit more. And then we go to a museum or a gallery, we go and do something different with that question in
yeah,
the front of our minds. We'd have
yeah,
another coffee afterwards and talk about, okay, what did we just learn that we can apply to this
yeah,
challenge? And it's, do you know what? If I'm really honest, in the circle of trust on this podcast, I was a bit like,
No one's
oh,
listening,
what
Lucy.
if this?
No one's
Yeah,
listening.
no
Don't
one's
worry.
listening. I was like,
Hundreds are
ooh.
listening, but don't listen.
I was like, ooh, what if this doesn't work? Imposter turned up. What if this doesn't work? And I was like, hold
Yeah.
your nerve, go with it. You know, like the neuroscience says this works. Anyway, it worked. Every time
Yes.
we
Yes.
moved forward on our thinking. So there's lots of little things that you can do. You know, we'd spend an hour going around a gallery. It's maybe a 2 hour session that really moved us forward. So as a
Yeah.
leader, leading by example and holding your nerve when you think, oh, what if this doesn't work? It's a test and see what does.
Yeah.
Test.
Yeah. I have to say, I have never had it not work. It's worked 100% of the time. And interestingly, it's almost never predictable what the outcome is, but it's predictable that it's worked. Um, it's fascinating, isn't it? I think the other place you could look for a bit of evidence, personal evidence, is maybe to think back through time and think about times when you have stepped away from work and an idea has come to you and you kind of then pursued
Yeah,
it. The difficulty with that is we don't always remember where the ideas come from. We assume they came from all of those many, many hours
yeah,
of working really hard, sitting at the desk. But the reality is they probably didn't.
exactly. I challenge anyone listening to get in touch with us and tell us the last time they were sat at their desk, emails flying, feeling a bit stressed out, and they had a breakthrough thought.
Yeah,
I'd love to know if that's you. Because
yeah,
whilst a bit of stress and a bit of adrenaline can help focus the mind, broadly speaking, when we're relaxed and more playful, that's when our brains are making different neural connections, and that's when we have
yeah,
those new thoughts and new ideas when we're literally percolating.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Actually, just as you said that, the other evidence I'm going to talk about Lego again briefly. I was watching my kids play Lego this weekend, and one of them got really frustrated because they just couldn't. They were following the instructions to doing kind of the build
Oh,
the thing, the castle, whatever, and they're
mm,
following the instructions, and they couldn't figure out what they got wrong, and they just kept going at it, and I could see what they'd done wrong. They used to go back 2 steps, and they put something in the wrong place, and it would have been really obvious, but instead they wouldn't come away. They wouldn't
yeah,
stop for a break, for a cup of juice, for a little bit of a cuddle. They wouldn't come away and then go back. They just wanted to get it done there.
yeah.
And they sat there and got huge tears, crying on the floor, trying to figure it out. Eventually they came away. They had a bit of a snack, a bit of a cuddle. They came back and went, "Oh, mummy, I've got to go back 3 steps." Like, yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
Well, I didn't say, yes, I know, but they saw it. They saw it
yeah.
really, really quickly. And yet they didn't see it just sitting there on the floor. And
What?
so I know most of us are doing slightly more complicated things than building Lego sets, depending on your point of view
Mm.
of a Lego set and how complicated that is. So imagine that multiplied 10, 20, 30 times. If you're dealing with complexity, imagine how much more important it is that you step away to see what is probably normally quite obvious in retrospect, but not
Absolutely.
at the time.
I love that analogy. And, you know, I've been the person and I've supported the people that just want to like lie down on the floor and cry because they can't solve the thing. And stepping away is a tactic to help have a bit of literal distance and
Yeah,
clarity to figure out how to move
yeah.
forward.
And I'll be honest, especially mid-pandemic, not in a great no one was having fun. Well, I don't think many people were having fun back
I
then.
don't know anyone that was
For
having fun.
me, no. For me, the massive behavior habit that I got into, which was incredibly unhelpful, was not allowing myself to step away. And yes, I was the one sitting on the floor in tears a couple of times, probably more
Yeah,
than a couple of times, if I'm completely honest.
yeah,
And
yeah,
what I wasn't doing was allowing myself to step back. So yeah, I've made that mistake as an
yeah,
adult as well.
yeah,
Um, but the key is to see it and then learn from it and
exactly,
trust the process. Stepping back really
exactly.
helps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm maybe not thinking about Lego, but I'm thinking about self-assembly furniture. And for immersion in work, self-assembly furniture, take a step back. It's very
Yes. Although
salient
you
advice.
told me last summer that you were I think we're decorating rather than doing IKEA furniture.
Yeah.
And you said that you'd had some really good ideas while you were decorating because you were listening to podcasts and you had
Yeah.
fresh ideas coming in. So that stepping back obviously worked really well.
Yeah. So two separate things. Painting a wall,
Hmm.
amazing, percolating, brilliant. Putting together a storage box where I had to end up drilling my own holes. That was crying on the floor where I needed
Fair
to
enough.
go away and come back.
Yeah, we're all different. We're all different.
We are. We are.
Personally, I'd rather do the IKEA furniture than the painting. But there we go. We are all different. That's
Oh,
why we
we
make a
can
good team, you and me.
exactly. Well, if you
Or
need anything
trade.
painting, I'll trade you.
I think this is an offline conversation, Lucy. Right, we're getting off topic.
So our conversation is around, does a good leader need to be 100% immersed in work? And we have a different slant on it, each of us, but overall the answer is no. Um, if leaders want to work with you, Juliet, what would be one thing that you can help them with and one bit of
Yeah.
advice if they're listening?
So I think the first thing is probably I often work with leaders who are working really long hours. If that's you, let's have a conversation because it doesn't need to be that way. You don't need to be, your immersion in work does not need to present itself as immensely long hours. So that's one of the things that I commonly help people with through my executive coaching that I do. Yeah. Lucy, how about you?
I think my slant on this, it comes back to a sort of innovation, cognitive diversity, and
Mm,
believing and testing out that stepping back can help you to move forward. And if you need help and support to do that, that can either look like one-to-one coaching or it can look like working with your whole team to help that culture of people supporting each other and sort of shift some of those really intrinsic beliefs that I need to be at my desk working really hard in order to be able to do my best work.
mm. Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. And I think actually, as we were prepping for this, we thought there might be another episode on this,
I
some of
think
those
so.
beliefs that can underpin people's really long working hours. So if that's
Yeah.
something that you're struggling with, then look a little bit further down or up the feed, depending on how your feed orders, because we're planning another episode on that fairly soon.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, as you're listening, thank you for spending your time with us on this episode. I'm Juliet Corbett, an executive coach and strategist working one-to-one with senior leaders.
And I'm Lucy Gower, a facilitator, trainer, and coach helping leaders develop high performing teams. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with colleagues and help leverage the impact of quiet leadership revolution.